It's that time again. It's live. Oh, what lovely lighting. Yes, it's still rather gray and murky here in Tahunga today, but we got a little light. So here in the living room, it's spring. We have fabulous lighting and falling out of my clothes. It's not that kind of a show. Hi, it's Alison, and I'm in the living room again. Didn't go anywhere. And I'm here, and we're going to be reading again. Did you have a good Easter? Did you have a good Passover? Some of you saw it last night. Bob and I, we went live for a few minutes. We showed off dinner because, oh, it's great. It was just like, okay, I got like some salmon at Costco and those little ravioli things. This is shrimp scampi ravioli. I didn't even know such a thing existed, but they had a big bag of them at Costco. And I'm like, okay. So it was awesome. We had those, and I made a lemon meringue pie. It was this recipe. Measurements aren't exact because like it's Gladys Knight and the Pips lemon icebox pie, and I think her grandma made it. So she just said, "Well, juice of 2 lemons." And I don't know. She had like giant California lemons and the Arizona lemons that I got because I think it was too much because it wasn't thick. It wasn't thick. It was really soft, even though I chilled it a long time. So I'm thinking a little less lemon juice. Taste. Fantastic, like lemony and eggy. So I'm working on it, but it's delicious. It was delicious. Everything was good. We just made stuff and ate it, and it was great. And the cat, Morticia. No, the cat, Morticia, has decided to start showing up, like walking on camera into videos and photos now. Which never, ever. I think the social isolation, the realization that people aren't coming over to the house anymore. She's not seeing any of her little friends, people who visit that she likes, and so she's kind of like, where'd everybody go? Why are you home all the time, and why aren't people coming over to play with me? So, yes, so she's now leaping in front of the camera to say hi, which is great, because she normally was like, I don't want a picture taken, but now she's way into it. So, we are reading. Now, one of the things I got when I got more bonnets from Walnut Grove were tin cups. So, like Laura and Mary, who we keep reading about with their little, hey, that's pretty good. Their little tin cups. I now have a tin cup. And I have some, these are Girl Scout shortbread cookies. They're awesome. Little House on the Prairie, where it all starts. Now, what's crazy is, like I said, it is all prairie. It is so all prairie. Little House on the Prairie, and we just read Prairie Day, and prior to that, we read High Prairie. And then there was camping on the prairie. And do you know what this chapter is called? It's called The House on the Prairie. In case you weren't sure what you were reading. So, yeah, super prairie. This is so prairie. This is great. This is when they actually built the little house. Where it all started. The Little House on the Prairie. Laura and Mary were up next morning earlier than the sun. They ate their breakfast of cornmeal mush with prairie hen gravy. Oh, that sounds pretty good. A lot of corn, because it keeps, and yeah, they just had prairie hens for dinner the other night. And hurried to help Ma wash the dishes. Pa was loading everything else into the wagon and hitching up Pet and Patty. When the sun rose, they were driving on across the prairie. There was no road now. Okay, there was no road yesterday. There were some wagon ruts sometimes. There is no road. Now there's nothing. There was no road now. Pet and Patty waded through the grasses, and the wagon left behind it only the tracks of its wheels. Before noon, Pa said, "Whoa!" The wagon stopped. "Here we are, Caroline," he said. "Right here, we'll build our house." And he decided this because, why? There's nothing there. All right. Laura and Mary scrambled over the feed box and dropped to the ground in a hurry. All around them there was nothing but grassy prairie spreading to the edge of the sky. Now, he doesn't, say why. They had another place when they're having the picnic. He goes, well, maybe we should here, because there's a river, right? There's water, and there's game. So why not? Why did they not just go ahead and, build right there? No, they drove further to more nothing and said, oh, this large field of nothing is much better than yesterday's giant field of nothing. I don't know how this works. It's homesteading. Oh, they scrambled over that feed box, and all around them there was nothing but grassy prairie spreading to the edge of the sky. Quite near them, to the north, the creek bottom lay below the prairie. The creek's nearby, it's good. Some darker green treetops showed, but beyond them, bits of the rim of earthen bluffs held up the prairie's grasses. Far away to the east, a broken line of different greens lay on the prairie, and Pa said that was the river. "That's the Verdigris River," he said, pointing it out to Ma. "Oh, we can get out our maps and look this up." And the historian's going, "Oh, yes, the Verdigris River. That's Verdigris, Verdigris. Right away, he and Ma began to unload the wagon. They took out everything and piled it on the ground. Then they took off the wagon cover and put it over the pile. Then they took even the wagon box off while Laura and Mary and Jack watched. Jack who's not dead. Jack the dog, who luckily did not die. We were very concerned. The wagon had been home for a long time. Now there was nothing left. Had been home for, yes, right, they'd been living it. The wagon had been home for a long time. Now there was nothing left of it but the four wheels and the parts that connected them. Pet and Patty were still hitched to the tongue. Pa took a bucket and his axe, and sitting on this skeleton wagon, he drove away. He drove right down into the prairie and out of sight. "Where's Pa going?" Laura asked. Might we all ask that? And Ma said, he's going to get a load of logs from the creek bottom. So he just took apart the little house, laid it all out, went, later, and went to go get wood. It was strange and frightening to be left without the wagon on the high prairie. The land and the sky seemed too large, and Laura felt small. She wanted to hide and be still in the tall grass, like a little prairie chicken. But she didn't. She helped Ma while Mary sat on the grass and minded baby Carrie. First, Laura and Ma made the beds under the wagon cover tent, always making them beds. Then Ma arranged the boxes and bundles. Milk, my little tin cup. The boxes and bundles, while Laura pulled all the grass from a space in front of the tent, because, again, fire. They made a bare place for the fire. They couldn't start the fire until Pa brought wood. There was nothing more to do, which is unusual because on the prairie there's constantly stuff for them to do, more to do. So Laura explored a little. She did not go far from the tent, but she found a queer little kind of tunnel in the grass. You'd never notice it if you looked across the waving grass tops, but when you came to it, there it was. A narrow, straight, hard path down between the grass stems. It went out into the endless prairie. Well, I guess, little animals and stuff had to burrow around through there, so there you are. Laura went along it a little way. She went slowly and more slowly, and then she stood still, and she felt queer. So she turned around and came back quickly. When she looked over her shoulder, there wasn't anything there, but she hurried. Scary. When Pa came riding back on a load of logs, Laura told him about that path. He said he'd seen it yesterday. "It's some old trail," he said. That night by the fire, Laura asked again when she would see a papoose. This running thing about wanting to see a child, Native American baby, who she just gave you a papoose. Were they actually even called papoose? Is that like a Cree or a Sioux Nation word for baby or for baby in a backpack? Is papoose actually a real word that Native Americans used to refer to their infants strapped to their backs? Or was that just totally made up? Did settlers just go, papoose, and start calling Indian babies papooses? I have no idea. I'm guessing it's probably completely somebody just pulled it out of the air. But papoose, it sounds cute, but it's not really what anybody was called. There you go. Papoose. Pa didn't know. He said you never saw Indians unless they wanted you to see them. He had seen Indians when he was a boy in New York State, but Laura never had. She knew there were wild men. They were wild men with red skins, and their hatchets were called tomahawks. Well, maybe. I mean, what did they actually call them? We have many, many things that we say. The Indian word for this is papoose, and Indian, and is for tomahawk, and all these things, and half the time we find out that no, that's completely not the no. Oh, a papoose holds. Now there you go. Someone said my husband says the papoose holds the baby in it. Suzanne. This is papoose may have meant child car seat, baby backpack. So when the papoose, yes, it may have been the holder of the papoose. Totally, which makes so much sense. Okay, there we are. There you go. tomahawks, which maybe they called them that. I don't know. We say they called them that. Pa knew all about wild animals, so he must also know about wild men, too. Maybe. Laura thought he would show her a papoose someday, just as he had shown her fawns and little bears and wolves. It's not the same, Laura. It's not the same. For days, Pa hauled logs. He made 2 piles of them, one for the house and one for the stable. There began to be a road where he drove back and forth to the creek bottoms, and at night, on their picket lines, Pet and Patty ate the grass till it was short and stubby all around the log pile. Pa began the house first. Here we go. He paced off the sides of it on the ground. Then with his spade, he dug a shallow little hollow along 2 sides of that space. Into these hollows, he rolled 2 of the biggest logs. They were sound, strong logs, because they must hold up the house. They were called sills. A windowsill, the base of the thing, a sill. And see, then here, there he is. Now, something we always wondered about on the show was like, why was the little house so small? Because it's not like you had the land, you could just build out. What's the difference? If you can get the wood, you could just build 17 rooms. Who's stopping you? But I guess you only had so much wood and you had to heat it, so maybe they went for come back there. Then Pa chose 2 more strong big logs, and he rolled those logs onto the ends of the sills so that they made a hollow square. Right, well, yes, you'd need 4 sides to your house. That makes sense. Now, with his axe, he cut a wide, deep notch near each end of the logs. He cut these notches out of the top of the log, but with his eye, he measured the sills, and he cut the notches so that they would fit around half the sill. Now, he did not measure. He measured by eye. Now, I don't know. Kitty, stop that. Stop that. Oh, all right. You really should, what they say, measure twice, cut once. You're supposed to measure more. Kitty, what are you doing over there? It's probably bad. You probably shouldn't be doing whatever the hell you're doing over there. Come here. Hey, you. Yeah, you. Okay. So he's just measuring by eye and hoping it'll work. When the notches were cut, he rolled the log over, and the notches fitted down over the sill. That finished the foundation of the house. It was 1 log high. That's all. The sills were half buried in the ground, and the logs on their ends fitted snugly to the ground. At the corners, where they crossed, the notches let them fit together so that they were no thicker than 1 log, and the 2 ends stuck out beyond the notches. So his measurements were correct. He did it. He totally did it. He was completely on it. He's very smart. Next day, Pa began the walls. From each side, he rolled up a log, and he notched its ends so that it fitted down over the end logs. Then he rolled up logs from the ends and notched them so that they fitted down over the side logs. Now the whole house was 2 logs high. That's how that works. The logs fitted solidly together at the corners, but no log is ever perfectly straight. And all logs are bigger at one end than at the other end. So cracks were left between them all along the walls. But that did not matter because Pa would chink those cracks. I was going to say, 'cause logs aren't even. It's not like boards. It's like, what do you do? But he figured it out. All by himself, he built the house 3 logs high. Then Ma helped him. Pa lifted one end of the log onto the wall. Then Ma held it while he lifted the other end. He stood up on the wall to cut the notches, and Ma helped roll and hold the log while he settled it where it should be to make the corner perfectly square. Wow. So log by log, they built the walls higher until they were pretty high. Laura couldn't get over them anymore. It's coming along. She was tired of watching Pa and Ma build the house, and she went into the tall grass exploring. Suddenly, she heard Pa shout, "Let go! No, get out from under!" The big heavy log was sliding. Pa was trying to hold up his end of it to keep it from falling on Ma. He couldn't. It crashed down. Laura saw Ma huddled on the ground. This is a problem when you're all alone in the middle of nowhere building a house by hand. This is what happens, is logs fall on people. You go whoops and you drop entire trees on your wife. And hey, emergency room. No, the nearest emergency room was back in Wisconsin. The nearest emergency room is thousands thousands of miles away. The nearest person who could maybe medicine man, local country doctor, person who could even help you is probably 100 or more miles away, and you don't have a car. Okay, so you really don't want to drop a log on someone, because this could be bad. She got to Ma almost as quickly as Pa did. Pa knelt down and called Ma in a dreadful voice, and Ma gasped, "I'm all right." "I'm fine, it's only a flesh wound." The log was on her foot. Ow! Pa lifted the log, and Ma pulled her foot from under it. Pa felt her to see if any bones were broken, because pretty much you're toast if that happens. "Move your arms," he said. "Does your back hurt? Can you turn your head?" It's like, because if not, she's going to die. Just making that clear. There's nowhere to go. If she can't turn her head, oh well. I mean, there's not like something they can do about this. Move your arms. Ma moved her arms, and she turned her head. "Thank God," Pa said. He helped Ma to sit up. She said again, "I'm all right, Charles. It's just my foot," which is also bad. Quickly, Pa took off her shoe and stocking. He felt her foot all over, moving the ankle and the instep and every toe. "Does it hurt much?" he asked. Ma's face was gray, and her mouth was a tight line. "Not much," she said, which we now know from like Ma's standard, because she was pretty tough, out of the prairie means it really hurt. Like, if she says not much, it means her foot is like excruciating pain. Or someone said, "Oh wait, emergency room's not even hundreds of miles away," because they hadn't invented emergency rooms yet. There's like, nothing. She's doomed. So she's, "Not much. That's fine. It doesn't hurt at all." "No bones broken," said Pa. "It's only a bad sprain." Ma said cheerfully, "Well, a sprain soon mended. Oh, don't be so upset, Charles." Okay, she's really taking this well. "I blame myself," said Pa. "I should have used skids." He helped Ma to the tent. He built up the fire and heated water. When the water was as hot as Ma could bear, she put her swollen foot into it. It was providential, which is capitalized, by the way, providential, that the foot was not crushed. Only a little hollow in the ground had saved it. So luckily there was an indentation, so she just got her foot smashed to spraining with a giant tree-sized log. Had it been solid ground, and like maybe rock and no indentation, squish, 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 go the foot, and she'd kind of be dead. Now, she's sticking it in hot water. I don't know. My doctor says that when you first injure something, you pull a muscle, you sprain something, you drop a log on your foot, initially you should put cold on it, like ice. Get the swelling down and the initial inflammation, and then when it settles down, out comes the hot water and heating pad. I don't know. That's it's the 1800s. Maybe they did it differently. Me, 2020, my doctor says first the cold, then the hot. I don't know. But someone just said, yes, cold water. What? Why is she going in hot water? It's too early. Ice. Well, there is no ice. She stick it in the creek. Get the swelling down. But there you go. So, she's sticking her foot in hot water, and he's thanking God there was a hollow in the ground. Pa kept pouring more hot water into the tub in which Ma's foot was soaking. Ow. Her foot was red from the heat, and the puffed ankle began to turn purple. Which is why I'm kind of like, why are we in hot water? Ma took her foot out of the water and bound strips of rag tightly around and round the ankle. "I can manage," she said. Because she always said that. She could not get her shoe on, but she tied more rags around her foot, and she hobbled on it. She got supper as usual, only a little more slowly, but Pa said she could not help to build the house until her ankle was well. So she's just going to continue with like the cooking and the cleaning and the ironing and the laundry with the one foot. Now, remember the episode when Ma was alone in a little house and she cut her leg on like some chicken wire and it got infected? She got out that knife. She's gonna cut it off. She's gonna cut her foot off because she's that kind of gal. So here, even in the book, foot's crushed by a whole tree stump and she's like nothing. So people have really high pain tolerance in the 1800s. He hewed out skids. These were long, flat slabs. One end rested on the ground, and the other end rested on the log wall. He was not going to lift any more logs. He and Ma would roll them up the skid. So he built little ramps to roll the logs up, which, as he said, he probably should have done in the first place. Oopsies. But Ma's ankle was not well yet. When she unwrapped it in the evenings to soak it in hot water, it was purple and black and green and yellow. The house must wait. Well, maybe if she put it in cold water, it wouldn't be purple and black. And I have a bruise. I have a bruise right now. This is kind of, I hit my leg. It's kind of yellow. But I'm not trying to build a house out of logs. And I'm going to put cold on it. Because that's what you do. Oh, look, here she is, soaking her totally smashed foot in hot water. Ow, 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 ow. Then one afternoon, Pa came merrily whistling up the creek road. They had not expected him home from hunting so soon. As soon as he saw them, he shouted, "Good news!" Okay, like anything would be good news at this point. They had a neighbor. A neighbor! Only 2 miles away on the other side of the creek. Pa had met him in the woods. He's always, like the guy who appeared in the woods and sold him horses, because people are just walking around in the woods. They were going to trade work, and that would make it easier for everyone. Whew. "He's a bachelor," said Pa. Are we supposed to go at that point? I don't know. He's a bachelor. What does that mean in the 1800s? He's a bachelor. And he says he can get along without a house better than you and the girls can. So he's going to help me first. Then as soon as he gets his logs ready, I'll go over and help him. Tough guy. They need not wait any longer for the house, and Ma need not do any more work on it. Awesome. "How do you like that, Caroline?" Pa asked joyfully, and Ma said, "That's good, Charles. I'm glad. Because I'm got tetanus and I'm dying, but, you know." Early next morning, and oh, who's the neighbor? Who's the neighbor? Do we know who the neighbor is? Guess who the neighbor is? Somebody knows. They're going, yay, yay. People know who the neighbors are. Yes, the next morning, Mr. Edwards came. Yay, Mr. Edwards. Yes, so he was cool. You know, Ma always gave Mr. Edwards a hard time, but, like, he's the one who helped build the house when her foot was smashed. Ow. There she is with a swollen, sprained foot, and he's come to help. He was lean and tall and brown. He bowed to Ma and called her ma'am politely. But he told Laura that he was a wild cat from Tennessee. He wore tall boots and a ragged jumper and a coonskin cap, and he could spit tobacco juice farther than Laura had ever imagined that anyone could spit tobacco juice. He could hit anything he spit at, too. Laura tried and tried, but she could never spit so far or so well as Mr. Edwards could. He could aim his spit. This was cool back then. Coonskin, he was, Daniel Boone was a man, but very Daniel Boone. He was a fast worker. In one day, he and Pa built those walls as high as Pa wanted them. They just banged that house out. They joked and sang while they worked, and their axes made the chips fly. On top of the walls, they set up a skeleton roof of slender poles. Then in the south wall, they cut a tall hole for a door, and the west wall and the east wall, they cut square holes for windows. So when you did these things, you didn't, like, use shorter logs. You didn't, like, cut the logs and measure and say, well, here's the door. You just built the whole thing up solid and then hacked your way through, and that's the door. That seems like a lot of work. Like, you could have said, well, if it's 10 feet long, we'll make it, 6 feet here, and we'll make a door. It's like use smaller wood. I don't know. There you go. Laura couldn't wait to see the inside of the house. As soon as the tall hole was cut, she ran inside. Everything was stripped there. Striped, because stripes of sunshine came through the cracks in the west wall, and stripes of shadow came down from the poles overhead. The stripes of shade and sunshine were all across Laura's hands and her arms and her bare feet. And through the cracks between the logs, she could see stripes of prairie. The sweet smell of the prairie mixed with the sweet smell of cut wood. Because, see, it's still this log thing that's, like, open to the elements. Because he hasn't done the chinking thing. Put stuff in the walls. I'm having my 10 cup of milk, sorry. Then, as Pa cut away the logs to make the window hole in the west wall, chunks of sunshine came in. When he finished, a big block of sunshine lay on the ground inside the house. Around the door hole and the window holes, Pa and Mr. Edwards nailed thin slabs against the cut ends of the logs. Framing here. And the house was finished, all but the roof. The walls were solid, and the house was large, much larger than the tent. It was a nice house. It wasn't even a little house with the bird. It was a big old house with the bird. Mr. Edwards said that he would go home now, but Pa and Ma said he must stay to supper. Ma had cooked an especially good supper because they had company. Ooh, what'd she make? Because they had like prairie hens the other day. That was good. There were stewed jackrabbit with white flour dumplings and plenty of gravy. There was a steaming hot, thick cornbread flavored with bacon fat. There was molasses to eat on the cornbread, but because this was company supper, they did not sweeten their coffee with molasses. Ma brought out the little paper sack of pale brown store sugar. Mr. Edwards said he surely did appreciate that supper. Then Pa brought out the fiddle. Oh, we all know where this is going. Mr. Edwards stretched out on the ground to listen, but first Pa played for Laura and Mary. He played their very favorite song, and he sang it like, oh, Laura liked it best of all because Pa's voice went down deeper in that song. Now, we've had moments where Ma was insulting the Native Americans. We had Pa wrote and had sang an insulting song about African Americans. Apparently now the Romany people, the gypsies, are about to take the next hit. Sorry, it's the 1800s. Oh, I am a gypsy king, I come and go as I please. I pull my old nightcap down and take the world at my ease. Then his voice went deep down, deeper than the very oldest bullfrogs. Oh, I am a gypsy king. Now, you notice we never did this one on the show, because Michael Landon had a very high, light voice. Yes, Caroline. And he giggled. He would go, hee, like a girl. So I don't know that Michael Landon could have sang, I am the gypsy king, because he was high tenor. There's definitely no thing. So, but Charles could sing, I am the gypsy king. They all laughed. Laura could hardly stop laughing. Oh, sing it again, Pa, sing it again, she cried, before she remembered that children must be seen and not heard. Then she was quiet. Pa went on playing, and everything began to dance. That's what it says here. Everything began to dance. Mr. Edwards rose up on one elbow, then he sat up, then he jumped up, and he danced. He danced like a jumping jack in the moonlight, while Pa's fiddle kept on rollicking and his foot kept tapping the ground. Laura's hands and Mary's hands were clapping together, and their feet were patting too. They're all tapping their foot, and they're clapping. And yes, Mr. Edwards is kind of a nut. Mr. Edwards is dancing like a giant weirdo. He's just, you see why Victor French got cast, because he was the only guy who could like pull this off, act like this big a nut. And then he said, you're the fiddlingest fool that I see, Mr. Edwards shouted admiringly to Pa. He didn't stop dancing, and Pa didn't stop playing. He played Money Musk and Arkansas Traveler, Irish Washerwoman, and the Devil's Hornpipe. I gotta learn these. Baby Carrie couldn't sleep in all that music. She's finally, because Baby Carrie slept through the whole book, she sat up in Ma's lap, looking at Mr. Edwards with round eyes and clapping her little hands and laughing. Even the firelight danced, and all around its edge the shadows were dancing. Only the new house stood still and quiet in the dark, till the big moon rose and shone on its gray walls and the yellow chips around it. Mr. Edwards said he must go. It was a long way back to his camp on the other side of the woods, the creek. He took his gun and said good night to Laura and Mary and Ma. He said a bachelor got mighty lonesome, and he surely had enjoyed this evening of home life. Play, Ingalls, he said, play me down the road. So while he went down the creek road and out of sight, Pa played, and Pa and Mr. Edwards and Laura sang with all their might. What did they sing? Oh, come on, you all know. What did they sing? We know. Yes. Old Dan Tucker was a fine old man, yea, washed his face in a frying pan, combed his hair with a wagon wheel, and died of a toothache in his heel. Get out of the way for old Dan Tucker, he's too late to get his supper. Supper's over and dishes washed, nothing left but a piece of squash. Old Dan Tucker went to town, riding a mule, leading a hound. There's other verses, I had no idea. Far over the prairie rang Pa's big voice and Laura's little one, and faintly from the creek bottom came a last whoop from Mr. Edwards. "Get out of the way for old Dan Tucker. He's too late to get his supper." Old Dan Tucker! And there, see, Mr. Edwards and Pa actually sang Old Dan Tucker in the book. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. We did love that when we would do Old Dan Tucker on the show, and when old Mr. Edwards and Pa would do that. The whole cast actually knows Old Dan. It was really funny. We had a cast reunion thing. We were in Arizona, I think, and somebody asked, it was a whole gaggle of us from the show, do you guys actually know Old Dan Tucker? And by God, we did. We all sang Old Dan Tucker. It was pretty cool. So we actually like Old Dan Tucker. We love that. When Pa's fiddle stopped, they could not hear Mr. Edwards anymore. Only the wind rustled in the prairie grasses. The big yellow moon was sailing high overhead. The sky was so full of light that not one star twinkled in it, and all the prairie was a shadowy mellowness. Oh, that's nice, a shadowy mellowness. Then, from the woods by the creek, a nightingale began to sing. Everything was silent, listening to the nightingale's song. The bird sang on and on. The cool wind moved over the prairie, and the song was round and clear above the grasses whispering. The sky was like a bowl of light overturned on the flat black land. The song ended. No one moved or spoke. Laura and Mary were quiet. Pa and Ma sat motionless. Only the wind stirred and the grasses sighed. Then Pa lifted the fiddle to his shoulder and softly touched the bow to the strings. Oh dear, he's going to do it again. A few notes fell like clear drops of water into the stillness. A pause, and Pa began to play the nightingale's song. The nightingale answered him. The nightingale began to sing again. It was singing with Pa's fiddle. When the strings were silent, the nightingale went on singing. When it paused, the fiddle called to it, and it sang again. The bird and the fiddle were talking to each other in the cool night under the moon. Hey, that's pretty cool. He could get the nightingale to sing, playing the fiddle, so that's nice. Hey, you know, milk tastes really good out of a tin cup. It keeps you cold. It's, good. All right. You can get these at the Walnut Grove store. I could autograph it and sell it to you. I have a couple. Buy a bonnet. Buy a tin cup. So when I was singing with Alison, I never sing either. I'm a terrible singer. So feel free to sing along when I'm singing, because you will be better than me. It's not difficult. Chapter 6, moving in. The itty bitty, well, kind of big Prairie house. The walls are up, Pa was saying to Ma in the morning, which is good since they nearly killed her. We'd better move in and get along as best we can without a floor or other fixins'. I must build the stable as fast as I can, so Pet and Patty can be inside walls too. Last night, I could hear wolves howling from every direction. Seemed like it, and close too. Oh, great. Well, you have your gun, so I'll not worry, said Ma. My foot is smashed, and wolves are going to eat us, but it's great. It's great. Everything's great. Yes, and there's Jack. But I'll feel easier in my mind when you and the girls have good solid walls around you. Well, yeah. Why do you suppose we haven't seen any Indians? Ma asked. Oh, I don't know, Pa replied carelessly. I've seen their camping places among the bluffs. They're away on a hunting trip now, I guess. Then Ma called, Girls, the sun's up, and Laura and Mary scrambled out of bed and into their clothes. Eat your breakfast quickly, Ma said, putting the last of the rabbit stew on their tin plates. Rabbit stew for breakfast. We're moving into the house today, and all the chips must be out. Oh, cleaning, more cleaning. So they ate quickly and hurried to carry all the chips out of the house. They ran back and forth as fast as they could, gathering their skirts full of chips and dumping them in a pile near the fire. But there were still chips on the ground inside the house when Ma began to sweep it with her willow bough broom. Ma limped. Poor Ma. Ma limped. Though her sprained ankle was beginning to get well, but she soon swept the earthen floor, and then Mary and Laura began to help her carry things into the house. And those chips are good for fires. Make fires and stuff. Pa was on top of the wall, stretching the canvas wagon top over the skeleton roof of saplings. Right, because they don't have a roof yet, but he's using the thing from the covered wagon thing because otherwise rain, snow, Indians, wolves, they just come in. The canvas billowed in the wind. Pa's beard blew wildly, and his hair stood up from his head as if it were trying to pull itself out. Like, rah! Okay. He held on to the canvas and fought it. Once it jerked so hard that Laura thought he must let go or sail into the air like a bird. But he held tight to the wall with his legs and tight to the canvas with his hands, and he tied it down. There, he said to it, stay where you are and be... Charles, Ma said. She stood with her arms full of quilts and looked up at him reprovingly. And be good, Pa said to the canvas. Why, Caroline, what did you think I was going to say? He was, because he knew he was going to start swearing at the canvas. Stay and be what? What terrible Prairie swear word did we not get here? Oh, and then she says, oh, Charles, Ma said, you scallywag. She just called him a scallywag. That's probably like a big deal. Pa came right down the corner of the house. The ends of the log stuck out, and he used them for a ladder. He ran his hand through his hair so that it stood up even more wildly, and Ma burst out laughing. Then he hugged her, quilts and all. Then they looked at the house, and Pa said, how's that for a snug house? I'll be thankful to get into it, said Ma. There was no door, and there were no windows. There was no floor, except the ground, and no roof, except the canvas. It's not really much of a house at that point, okay. But the house had good stout walls, and it would stay where it was. It was not like the wagon that every morning went on to some other place. We're going to do well here, Caroline, Pa said. Oh, he always says that, right? This is a great country. This is a country I'll be contented to stay in the rest of my life. Even when it's settled up, Ma asked. Even when it's settled up, no matter how thick and close the neighbors get, this country will never feel crowded. Look at that sky. Okay, he's referring to it as a country, its own country, because, as I said, it was the United States, and then there was all this kind of unincorporated Indian Territory treaty land. It wasn't really quite, it was kind of its own country. And he's going to leave again. We know that because there's like 7 more freaking books. So, we know he's not staying. But there you go. Laura knew what he meant. She liked this place too. She liked the enormous sky and the winds and the land that you couldn't see to the end of. Everything was so fresh and clean and big and splendid. By dinner time, the house was in order. The beds were neatly made on the floor. The wagon seat and 2 ends of logs were brought in for chairs. Pa's gun lay on its pegs above the doorway. Boxes and bundles were neat against the walls. It was a pleasant house. A soft light came through the canvas roof, and wind and sunshine came through the window holes. Every crack in the 4 walls glowed a little because the sun was overhead. He's going to need to fill the zinc. It's going to get cold. Only the campfire stayed where it had been. Pa said he would build a fireplace in the house as soon as he could. He would hew out slabs to make a solid roof, too, before winter came. Kind of better. He would lay a puncheon floor, and make beds and tables and chairs. But all that work must wait until he'd helped Mr. Edwards, and he built a stable for Pet and Patty. Horses first, but horses first is important because the horses going to be outside, the wolves going to eat the horses first. So, yeah, you kind of, and then you're totally hosed. So, they do have to build a barn. When that's all done, said Ma, I want a clothesline. That's an ambition. Okay. Pa laughed. Yes, and I want a well. Such practical folk. After dinner, he hitched Pet and Patty to the wagon, and he hauled a tub full of water from the creek so that Ma could do the washing. Well, it is nice. She's doing all, but he does go get the water for her. He didn't make her carry it back on her head. I guess he was probably progressive at the time. You could wash clothes in the creek, he told her. Will be convenient. Indian women do. Oh, don't go there with Caroline. If we wanted to live like Indians, you could make a hole in the roof to let the smoke out, and we'd have the fire on the floor inside the house, said Ma. Indians do. She's not happy about this at all. That afternoon, she washed the clothes in the tub and spread them on the grass to dry. You know, they could just build a fire in the house, and they could just put a hole in the roof, and it would be, like, insanely practical. But as Mom said, Indians, we're not like them. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. After supper, they sat for a while by the campfire. That night, they would sleep in the house. They would never sleep beside a campfire again. Pa and... Well, yes, actually, they will. Guess we know that's going to happen. Pa and Ma talked about the folks in Wisconsin, and Ma wished she could send them a letter. But Independence was 40 miles away, and no letter could go until Pa made the long trip to the post office there. 40 miles to the post office. Back in the big woods, so far away, Grandpa and Grandma and the aunts and the uncles and cousins did not know where Pa and Ma and Laura and Mary and baby Carrie were. And sitting there by the campfire, no one knew what might have happened in the big woods. There was no way to find out. Imagine that. No news. I mean, yeah, no internet, but no news. No radio. You can't, like, oh, there's been a fire. No radio. Nothing. No newspaper, no radio, no phone. And in this case, no mail. It's not like, I mean, some place in the middle of the world, oh, the Pony Express would come, and you'd give them a letter, and you had mail. They don't even have that. They have no idea. Somebody could have blown Wisconsin off the map. There could have been a plague. There could have been anything. Wolves could have come. And as far as Grandma and Grandpa know, they could have, maybe the Ingalls didn't make it out of the river. They don't know. They have no idea what is happening to their families. And they have to wait till they get to the post office and hope the letter goes through. Terrifying. We can, like, pick up a phone and go, oh, you good? We can check. These people had no idea. Well, it's bedtime, Ma said. Baby Carrie was already asleep. Of course she was. Ma carried her into the house and undressed her while Mary unbuttoned Laura's dress and petticoat waist down the back, and Pa hung a quilt over the door hole. Quilt. The quilt would be better than no door. Then Pa went out to bring Pet and Patty close to the house. He called back softly, "Come out here, Caroline, and look at the moon." Oh, he's still so romantic. It's nice. Mary and Laura lay in their little bed on the ground inside the new house and watched the sky through the window hole to the east. The edge of the big, bright moon glittered at the bottom of the window space, and Laura sat up. She looked at the great moon sailing silently higher in the clear sky. And see, they're in the house, and it's not bad. I mean, it's just a quilt over the door, but look, they've got like stuff. They've got beds. It's still better than the ground and the wagon. It's an improvement. So its light made silvery lines all in the cracks on that side of the house. The light poured through the window hole and made a square of soft radiance on the floor. It was so bright that Laura saw Ma plainly when she lifted the quilt at the door and came in. Then Laura very quickly lay down before Ma saw her naughtily sitting up in bed. She heard Pet and Patty whinnying softly to Pa. Then the faint thuds of their feet came into her ear from the floor. Clump, clump, clump. Nee! Pet and Patty and Pa were coming toward the house, and Laura heard Pa singing, "Sail on, silver moon, shed your radiance o'er the sky." Oh, that's pretty. I don't know that one. His voice was like a part of the night and the moonlight and the stillness of the prairie. He came to the doorway singing, "By the pale silver light of the moon." Softly Ma said, "Hush, Charles, you'll wake the children." I think Charles and Caroline had a little romantic kissy-poo moment because he said, "Oh, quick, come out and look at the moon." You know, they've been sleeping on the ground outdoors for like a month. She's seen the moon. And he's like, no, you should come on out and look at the moon while the kids are in bed. And she comes out, and then we don't hear anything, and then it's very quiet. She comes back, and then he comes back, and he's going, "Yeah, light of the moon," singing romantic songs. And I think maybe Charles and Caroline were like, "Wait, we got the house up, kids are asleep, and we can like kiss, we can like make out." So I think that's adorable that they still, after all those children and all that slept across the prairie, still snuck out in the moonlight to like smidge. It's awesome. So Pa came in without a sound. Jack followed at his heels and lay down across the doorway. Good dog. Glad he didn't drown. Now they were all inside the stout walls of their new home, and they were snug and safe. Drowsily, Laura heard a long wolf howl rising from far away on the prairie, but only a little shiver went up her backbone, and she fell asleep. Yay! Okay, nobody died in that chapter. No dogs drowned, and it was awesome. So that was 2 chapters, 2 whole chapters. So chapter 7 is tomorrow, and it's going to get scary again because it's the wolf pack. Wolves! Wolves! Arr, arr. We're going to have wolves, which is always delightful. Lots and lots of wolves. A long chapter. It must be many wolves. And then the next one is called 2 Stout Doors, because yes, after wolves, we then go build doors. Oh, we build doors on the house because we don't want to. I have my thing. Where's my bookmark? I don't know what I'm doing. There it is. Yes, then there's doors. So this is awesome. I'm enjoying this enormously. And as I said, I have little cookies I think up. So again, there were bonnet orders. I just printed mailing labels, so I'll be getting those out soon. And those are good. So, I don't know. I'll see how many more bonnets I have. If you go to the store and it says there, I mean, I'm out. I'm trying to get more. And then you may see that there are bonnets in stock. I'll say 8 or 10. You can order it. I may have tin cups. That might become a thing because they're really cool. And there's always books and photos and whatnot, lots of that sort of thing. So, this is great. This is like a blast. So I'm just gonna keep on doing this. So tomorrow we do 1:30 again. Now a couple of people have said, "What is all this stuff like behind you?" Because we have stuff. And I'm going with this one in the chair because, I love the thing with the fireplace, but I gotta tell you, I was sitting on my coffee table, essentially, with the tripod on the sofa, which was not really stable, and sitting on the coffee table wasn't really good for my back. I was sitting at the coffee table, then I go, ow. So now I'm like, it's like a nice chair with a pillow under my back for good posture, because we are old. And our back will totally kill us if we try sitting on a coffee table all day. So we will do things from chairs. We'll rearrange the furniture. Things will happen. But we have things. Yes. I have a kitty clock. I don't think it's the right time. What is that? No, that is so. Oh my God. It's like, I have to reset the time on it. It stopped working. And just the other day, I got the battery. Suddenly, it's like, what's that noise? And Bob goes, is the cat clock working again? Did it just, the tail's going? Why did the cat clock just start again? Ooh, we don't know. But I'll reset the time on it because apparently the wagon tail kitty cat clock totally works now. I've been ignoring it for months. Things. Here's the thing. This is, come here. This is Wendy the Good Witch. If you are a fan of Casper the Friendly Ghost, remember the cartoons Casper, and there's like little books and cartoons Casper, there were many other characters. There was the Ghostly Trio, but there was Spooky, the little bad boy ghost, and there was Wendy, and she was a good witch. There was a Casper album in the early 60s, which you can get on iTunes. It's like the dumbest thing. And there's, what good is a good witch? So cute. My mother was an actress, Norma Macmillan. You can look her up, Norma Macmillan. And she worked like mad. She was in a bunch of movies and a million commercials. And mostly, though, she did voiceover. She did cartoons. And my mother was the voice of, yes, Casper, the Friendly Ghost. And she was Wendy, and she was Spooky. She was kind of Nightmare the Horse. She was everybody. Basically, Casper was my mom and a guy in a studio. And he was all three of the Ghostly Trio and everybody else. And she was Casper, the gang. And when they did the album, it's like a musical with a cast of thousands, and it's just her and the guy going la la la. So it was very crazy. So she was all the characters in Casper. If you watched Underdog, which was the great actor Wally Cox played Underdog, who was a superhero who was a dog. He was Shoeshine Boy. He was the unassuming Shoeshine Boy by day, and Underdog who took his magic pill. And his girlfriend was the Lois Lane of the piece, Sweet Polly Purebred. And she was a little doggy newscaster. She wore cute little suits and had a little microphone. That was my mother. My mother was Sweet Polly Purebred, Underdog's girlfriend. She was Casper. And my mother was Gumby. I know. This is always a hell of a thing whenever I say this. My mother My mother was Gumby. And it was the same thing. It was her and a guy. So she was Gumby and this guy was Pokey. And then she was Gumby's mom and Gumby's sister. Oh, and then they added these two really weird characters, Prickle and Goo. And my mother was Goo. Little blue thing. And so she was Goo, and the guy was Pokey, was Prickle. And so she was, when Gumby had little friends and his mom, and that was all her. And then the weirdest one, and you saw them on the mantelpiece. You saw them on the mantelpiece. You probably saw Davy, and Goliath on the mantle. It was just like, let's just do this. Tra-la-la. Look, there. Davy and Goliath. Yeah, that was really professional. Just Davy and Goliath. My mother was Davy. She was the voice of Davy on Davy and Goliath. And she was the same thing. Davy's mom and Davy's sister and all of Davy's friends. So on Davy and Goliath, and the guy was Goliath and Davy's dad and the policeman and the reverend and the fireman. So when Davy on Davy and Goliath would have a party and his mom and his sister and like 4 of his little friends would be there, they were all my mother. So she would have these like 7-way conversations by herself. Well, Mom, yes, Davy. So that's what she did. She did all of those. She was Davy, she was Casper, she was Gumby, she was Sweet Polly Purebred. And she was in some other commercials and cartoons and whatnot. And if you were around in the 1980s, like late 80s, there was a series of commercials for Kraft mayonnaise with these 2 little old ladies. That's my mother. She was the one. It's creamier. This is my mother. And if you're older, okay, like you'd have to be actually older than me because I was a bambino. I was a baby when this happened. But if you're a little older than me, you may remember, or you're a real geek. You're just a huge nerd and you collect all the records. There's a record called The First Family. It was the first comedy album about a seated president. People didn't do comedy albums about presidents in 1960, blah, blah, blah. And it was about the Kennedys. It was about John F. Kennedy and Jackie and Caroline and John and all the characters in the White House at the time of JFK. And it was called The First Family. And it's famous. It has the album cover. They're all like standing in front of the White House. My mother was the voice of little Caroline Kennedy and John on the freaking First Family album. So there's a bunch of people right now who are that age or are huge collectors who are going, ugh, because it was huge. It was like one of the fastest, Guinness Book of World Records, literally, for like fastest selling album in history. Was the thing. So my mother was very famous. My Norma Macmillan, and a Canadian lady, and she was amazing. Yes, someone was saying, she passed away in 2001. Amazing woman, look her up on IMDb. She did everything, TV, movies, whatnot. My father, who is also on the mantelpiece, here, we'll just lift the camera. We'll go slowly this time, not just give you a whiplash. You see the picture on the end? Yes. The picture that's been up in some of the others, and we'll have it up again. The guy going, yeah, that's my dad. He's on the Walk of Fame in Vancouver. With a plaque, the Walk of Fame. He's famous. He was an actor. He was on Broadway, and my parents were actors in Canada, but then he became a manager. And yes, my dad worked for Liberace. Yes, my father worked for Seymour Heller and Associates. Was Liberace's manager. If you saw that kooky thing, was it Behind the Candelabra, the whole thing with the movie about Liberace, there was Seymour Heller, the manager, was played by Dan Aykroyd. That was my dad's boss. That was the guy. My dad. So my father managed Liberace, and we went to his shows, and it was totally as wackadoo bizarre as you would think. It was hilarious. Liberace was awesome. So yes, he was famous and worked with all kinds of famous people and did all kinds of crazy things. And you can look him up on IMDb and he ran a theater. And it's all in my book. Is this a commercial? Wait, do I have a copy of the book? They lean out of shot. They're professional. It's all in my book. But it is. If you don't already have this, ask your friends, because half of you commenting are going, yes, I read it in the book. I have a book, and you can read all about all of this, all about Casper and Liberace. That's all in there. So there you are. Such fun. This is great. I'll point out more junk in the house as we go, and more shout outs. Who am I supposed to shout out? Oh, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Kevin Robertson wanted me to do. Hi. Also Wendy Lee, Baby Grace. She's here, and she makes stuff. Where's my doll? I had a doll. She gave me a doll. She's making tiny Nellie doll. It's on the mantle. Is it on the mantle? It's not on the mantle. It was. Oh, there she is. Yes. Hang on. I'm going for a walk. I'll be right back. Wait. Don't move. Okay. Yeah, so Wendy, she has stuff, and she has little covered wagons. She was Baby Grace, and she sells stuff, and she has a book. Oh, does she have a book? She has a book, and she has little covered wagons, and it's a clothespin. It's a very little house in the park. It's a little tiny clothespin doll, and can you tell who this is? Oh, gee, I don't know. And look, we're both wearing purple and yellow today. See, it's really neat, isn't it? It's neat, it's totally. There you are. So yeah, this is what I do. I amuse myself in the living room with all of you. So this is awesome, and you seem to be in good spirits. I'm seeing little comments. You're hanging in there. Good. Wash your hands. Wear your little masks. Take care of yourself. Did I have my bonnet? I didn't have my bonnet on. I'm wearing my bonnet. I didn't have it on. It's hot. It's hot today. It's warm. Is this yellow? Is it you like? It's a fetching yellow. Shirtless paw doll. No, we don't have shirtless paw dolls. We have any bonnets. This one's very nice. The yellow with the purple. But I have better lighting now, so I don't know. Hello from Canada. We are, thank you. Thank you again. We'll do this all tomorrow. I'm so glad you're hanging out and doing this with me and reading the books and watching the show and doing stuff. Take care of each other. Hang in there. And we will be okay eventually.